All right, Bindu, I thought we'd take a look at the internet weather for this week. This is the most probe port, so this is the ports that receive the most probing, not necessarily how many devices are doing it, but by sheer volume of probe activity. There's a lot of these IoT ones in here, like Telnet 23TCP and SSH 22, 3389 remote desktop protocol, also often targeted, gives you remote access. But the one we're probably going to focus in most today is this 5555 TCP, which we've talked about on the show before. It's this Android debugger port. So we're going to take a closer look at that one. 8545 I'll just kind of call out because a lot of people probably won't recognize it, but that is that Ethereum wallet. We've talked about this one on the show as well. There's been a lot of activity on here for probably 6 months or more. There's a vulnerability in a particular software package for your Ethereum wallet. And there's some bad actors scanning for those, trying to steal cryptocurrency from them. But we won't take a closer look at that one today. And then in terms of the most sources probing, we do still see that the 445 TCP, infamously the WannaCry port for that vulnerability that's available on that port, still pretty high. The port 5555 TCP again shows up in the most sources probing, and this has jumped 5 spots. And I also wanted to take a closer look at 8080 TCP. This is that GPON router vulnerability that's kind of been getting a lot of activity the past maybe 3-4 months, something like that. So in terms of the 5555 TCP, this is the Android debug bridge. Android devices, they often have a debug mode on them, and you can go into your settings and enable this. And when you do, it gives you very low level access to the device. So what bad actors have figured out is if somebody inadvertently left this on by accident, they can connect to it, and instead of debugging a particular application, they can install malware on the device that way. So there's one family of malware that's pretty prominent out there called the ADB miner family that's installing a cryptocurrency miner via this exposed port. This is a picture of what it looked like 2 weeks ago. And you can see somewhere around February timeframe is when it first kicked in. We didn't really have any
anything until then.
Yeah, any real volume of scanning. But then from that point, we had maybe, let's see, was it like maybe 5,000-6,000 it peaked at around there. Kind of went down, and then there was some renewed interest in late March, it looks like, that got it up to maybe 7,500 scan sources per hour. So if we look at what's happened in the past 2 days, is that this is that trend chart that you saw. It's almost dwarfed by the current activity that's going on, and we're up around 55,000, 60,000 scan sources per hour, which is quite a bit of a change here. It's more than maybe a 4 or 5-fold increase from what we had seen previously. So I changed what this is related primarily to, because it looks like most of this is coming from a different family of malware called Satori. The Satori family of malware, they have kind of a suite of exploits, and they don't target one family of devices. They like to scoop up as many different device types as they can if they're easily exploitable. So it looks like they've added this into their repertoire. I also noticed 360 NetLab, who we've talked about on the show before, they had some conversation here. They talked about on July 8th, which was 2 days ago, which is right around when this activity started, that they said Satori is changing again this morning and started to scan on port 5555 for Android ADB a few hours ago. They saw a 4-fold increase as well. They mentioned that the ISC Internet Storm Center at SANS also is reporting about the same thing. So interesting that there's a lot of activity or interest in this port from Satori. So you want to check your devices if you can, if you know how, to make sure that this service isn't enabled, and if it's exposed to the internet, that's what really gets you in trouble in terms of being able to get compromised by some of these families of malware.
Yeah, and looking at this level of increased activity, most likely these are the things that eventually will turn into something big and malicious, right?
These are the types of attack patterns that we are going to see in the future. So make sure that every device, if it's basically connecting, irrespective of its functionality, it is an entry point into your network. So keep that in mind.
And then the port 8080 TCP, this is that GPON vulnerability, although I will admit there's more than just GPON router vulnerability. So I looked at our Honeypot and we see kind of a mixture of people looking for Tomcat, because Tomcat is on that port as well. People looking for proxy servers running on port 8080 TCP. We know that that is another thing frequently run on port 8080, trying to see if there's some kind of open proxy. So there could be a mixture of activities here, although I definitely do see targeted attacks specifically using this GPON exploit. 360 NetLab actually gave a pretty good write-up of this a few months ago about the types of families that are using this. Satori, which we talked about just in the last slide for the port 5555, the Android one, this is using the GPON vulnerability as one of its exploit that it will try. But there's a bunch of other ones: Mirai, Hajime, Mustic, Metal. There's probably even others at this point. This was written a couple of months ago, but it was really quick once this vulnerability came out. A lot of these malware families added it into their repertoire for using to exploit. And this is just a kind of a picture of one of the honeypot captures that we had. I think I might have showed this last time. Basically the same thing. This one is, you can see they're actually doing the exploit by embedding a command. So there's basically a remote code execution that's passed in as a parameter here, telling it to wget this piece of malware and then execute it. I safely fetch that, put it in a virus total, and you can see it does show up as a variant of Mirai for the most part in terms of detections up on virus total. Interesting that they named it VPN filter. That is another family of malware / exploit that was going on recently as well. So this could be a somewhat missed detection, but they're very similar in nature, so that might explain why that is. And that's all I really had for this week.